Hey there, my name's Mark McCartney and welcome to the What is a Good Life podcast. Over the last 2 years, I've interviewed over 170 people around this question, not to provide you with the universal answer, but to help you to find and define your own answer to this question. On the 42nd episode of the What is a Good Life podcast, I'm delighted to have Pranay Sanklecha as our guest. Pranay is a philosopher, the founder of the philosophy practice, and a former philosophy professor at the University of Graz. In this episode, Pranay looks to explore my own perspectives as well as sharing his own. We discuss the motives I had for starting this project, our realisations of the pitfalls of striving for specific states or experiences, and that real change may appear slow in the moment, but can be considerable when viewed over time. He also breaks down bigger concepts and questions into smaller, applicable and relatable chunks, like a good life into a good day, and the notions of oneness and loving everyone, to focusing on truly loving your partner in more trying times in life. Much of what Pranay is pointing to in this conversation is that if love, beauty and God are to be found, and indeed a good life itself, it is right here in the mess of daily life and not escaping from it. This episode will give you plenty to contemplate in terms of where and how you are looking to experience a good life. Pranay is my kind of philosopher in that he is rooted in real life examples and situations, and is incredibly transparent and insightful as well. And if you enjoy this conversation, please like, share and subscribe if you're on YouTube. And if you're on the podcasting platforms, please leave a review, as I'd greatly appreciate your support at this stage of my podcasting journey. So without further ado, the 42nd episode of the What is a Good Life podcast. So Pranay, tell me all about you and your whole life story up until this point.
Yeah.
I'll kick it off now.
Okay.
Pranay, thank you very much for joining me on the What is a Good Life podcast today. Based on some of our previous conversations to this date, you're someone who I was very excited to talk to, and I'm excited to see where the hell this goes or where you take this conversation.
Yeah. Thanks, Mark. I'm excited too. As I warned you when I accepted the invitation, I'm rubbish at podcasts in the general sense as a guest, because I hate giving lectures. So I will be asking you a lot of questions. I won't be telling you. Yeah, I don't really know what I think about a good life, to be honest. So I'm curious, much more curious what you think. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be. I'm looking forward to it. What am I supposed to say?
I'm going to maintain some semblance of tradition. Yeah, I'm going to maintain some semblance of tradition and ask the one question I do have planned, which is there a question you're trying to answer as you move through life, Pranay?
Multiple questions, I guess, and they change over time. And I don't want to be flippant because the title of the podcast is "What is a Good Life" and so on. But to be honest, so one question I'm trying to answer right now is, how do I earn enough money to support my family? I don't know if this counts as what is a good life question. But the reason I mention it is, at least for me, there are loads of questions in life. And I had continued to have a tendency to elevate some questions and not others. To be like, okay, if I think about a good life, it's somehow got to be a profound quest, because it's somehow a big question. And I'm beginning to come around to experience is making me come around to the view that, well, actually, all of it is relevant. How do I manage to get my son to brush his teeth? Strikes me as just as important a life question at the moment as what is the meaning of life? But in terms of a question that I've gone through life with, I don't know about that, but I've always been searching, like many of us, I think. Let me flip this back on you because I don't want to fall into this.
But wait, one question: how did you get your son to brush his teeth?
Oh, mate, we've actually. It's a real production. It's a real drama. But it works kind of now. So we've converted teeth brushing. It's no longer brushing your teeth as the main event. It's actually playing with water, and along the way, your teeth get brushed. So we go to the sink. There's like a shitload of toys and all kinds of things, and he's plays with it. And even then, it often doesn't work properly. And then the nuclear option is I say, okay, Rahi, you can throw water over me if during this time your mother can brush your teeth. And that normally works. He was like, yeah, let's do that. So I don't, that's the nuclear option. I tried to avoid it, but probably twice a week I have to use it. The rest of the time is playing with water.
Right.
Yeah. This is, you've
Cool.
got this joy.
Yeah. I'm taking notes in advance.
Yeah, yeah.
But
I
that's
have a question, Mark, if I may.
yeah. Go for it.
Where does what's the story of your interest in this question? Like how does an Irishman who I think has had fairly high intensity corporate jobs or corporate type jobs over the course of his life, how does he end up doing a podcast on the question and asking people what is a good life? Like where's your interest in the question come from? Has it always been there, or has it been, did something happen when you were 20, 30,
No,
40?
yeah, I think for me it was when I was 31 or 31 in London and needing to really figure out why I was behaving the way I was behaving in relationships. I went to see a clinical psychologist then, and that really just opened up, I don't know, a whole world of inquiry. Like it was interesting to go down the path for a little while with the psychologist.
Uh-huh.
But then even I saw the psychologist looking at not my life through the lens or my interpretation of my behavior through the lens of maybe cultural norms. And the more like, what a good life would be, or what a good productive member of society might be, look like. And so then I became just really fascinated with, like, initially it was meditation, and then it was like journaling, reading certain psychology or philosophy, but really running lots of experiments in my own life, like over the course of the last few years, like locking myself in dark rooms for 24 hours.
Aaron Rodgers. Yeah.
I heard he came late to the party. I first tried this many years ago. But then, like, even like Aaron Rodgers, I guess, geez, I'm such a fucking cliche, but like it involved ayahuasca about 8 or 9 years ago. Sporadic touch points with lots of different things. And I don't know, to me, the point of this was that I really have a resistance to anybody thinking that they know what a good life is for me. And that the main point of it was when I initially started interviewing people, because I had no clue what it would become. I interviewed 120 people in pretty quick order a couple of years back, and none of these were published. These were anonymous interviews.
Okay.
And really it was just to give people a bit of space to reflect on their own life and ideally come up with their own answer, because I don't know, I see so much self-help and pop psychology stuff. It seems like garbage to me, like, tips like, just love everybody, or stop judging people, or, just these, and from my experience, even moments of that stuff is really hard to get. Like just a moment where I feel fully connected with people, with the world, the universe around me, an idea of God, even for me, maybe. I don't know, like for everyone, for what that means to anyone else. But this is a whole continuous process, and it's not, I don't know, a big part of it too was also sharing people's personal reflections in the initial interviews that I put into a newsletter, which just shown that everyone's struggling with something. And the point of life, I don't think, is not to struggle. Like, even if you find meaning, you find purpose, whatever, like, you're still going to have difficulty, and there's still going to be human relationships. There's still going to be your own neuroses. Like, life is this thing which I think doesn't need to be perfected. It's just try to figure it out yourself and see where you go, kind of thing.
I don't know if I translate a little bit, I don't know if it's accurate, but one partial description of what you've been doing since you're 31 is, maybe, tell me if this is right, if I understand you, is that you've been searching for something. Not necessarily one thing, but there was dissatisfaction with some existing state of affairs, or there was some instinct that something needed to change. And there's been since then a continual process of movement towards something, away from something. And I guess the question I have is, can you articulate, or can you ramble? Like, what are the things that you're looking for? So I don't know, are you looking for God? Are you looking for a feeling? Are you looking for a life that looks a certain way practically? Like, this fascinates me, what people search for when they start searching.
I think definitely at the start it was peace, like
Yeah.
peace from inner turmoil,
Mm.
from maybe inner struggle.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And then after that, though, it's become a lot more playful, like as
Uh-huh.
in like in a curiosity sense, then of like I find it really interesting that rationally speaking or logically speaking, I would know a whole series of things that I don't implement in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
like what the hell are, we talked
Yeah.
before even about, I saw an article of yours when you were talking about binge eating, right?
Right. Right.
You
Yeah.
don't
Yeah.
need to,
Yeah. Yeah.
and we don't like, I know if I go to the supermarket and buy a load of junk food, I know logically while I'm doing that, even that
Yeah.
at tomorrow morning, I may feel a bit crap after this.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yet there I am, as I mentioned to you, hoping that I can go to the self
Yeah.
checkout queue so that
Yeah.
someone
Yeah.
doesn't see what's in my shopping
Yeah.
basket. Like, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Then I think it's become a bit of a mission to accept life for whatever it is, and to
Uh-huh.
be not to fall into a passive state of just observing life. I am torn as to whether there is any free will, and I
Mm-hmm.
genuinely mean that, like not in just a passing curiosity or intellectual sense. Like
Mm-hmm.
there's lots of things that I haven't figured out about this existence.
Mm-hmm.
But can I then just, that to me is a huge thing to be curious about. Like
Mm-hmm.
it amazes me sometimes the things that we take for granted and that we don't investigate versus where we do put our attention and focus. Like,
Yeah.
you and I talked about before, even putting it on sporting events or whatever it
Yeah.
would be. And there's all
Yeah.
these other questions that we have no idea about or that we're not even curious about. So
Yeah.
I'd say initially from pain or struggle, then probably to an idea of perfecting life and finding a mission, and then everything just goes,
Yeah.
it's all roses.
Yeah.
But I really do see at this point that the hardship or the struggle is absolutely inherently necessary for the joy or the
Mm-hmm.
happiness as well. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so just trying to treat certain parts of life as not an imposter would be something I'm interested in,
Mm-hmm.
because I don't
Mm-hmm.
see us having the capacity to control it all as much
Yeah.
as I think
Yeah.
we have the capacity to.
Yeah. So it's a way of now
Does
it's
that
evolved. Yeah, yeah, it does a lot. And just again to check that I've understood, if I put it in different words, it, this what you're looking for is now evolved into kind of a way of being in the world, like an attitude towards existence, towards life.
absolutely.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
And
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and I guess a previous guest who's interviewing people on the topic of wisdom, he was mentioning to me, he subsequently become a friend of mine. He said that the feeling you live in is your life,
Mm,
and it's not you can deconstruct that in whatever way, but that resonates a lot with me for some reason. Like I think if I can just feel okay in the universe, even when I'm a bit sad or pissed off,
mm,
if I can just have a glimmer of a wider lens or perspective, that even when I'm absolutely joyful and laughing my ass off, whether it's with my wife or some friends or whoever, that also knowing that this isn't, that I'm not holding on to that either.
mm,
And it's not to be detached from the experience of the emotion, because I'm a very emotional
mm,
character. Um, but just that, I don't know, just a slight perspective. Like I do have a suspicion, Pranay, we get to some other realm after this, and not that you're in your body form and I'm in my body form, or even that we're in some container that is our isness or whatever you want to describe it. But I do get the impression we could like laugh at ourselves that we took this experience all that seriously.
mm,
That's just a sneaking
mm,
suspicion of mine that this is some sort of, like, whether it's a realm in which we develop consciousness more, or that we learn
mm,
something, or whatever it might be. I just I have an idea that it has been created by something, and that there is a bit of a, that there is almost a bit of a joke to the absurdity of it all,
mhm,
because like I'm completely perplexed by our capacity to be like this destructive and this loving and creative as well. Do you know what I'm saying?
I do follow it, I think, and I sympathize quite a bit of it. But like, there's a question there that for me is a live question that I always and continue to struggle with, to wonder about. So on the one hand, there's this where you say, well, let's not take our lives so seriously. Let's not take ourselves so seriously, right? I mean, that there's, yeah, let's just, if we take a step back, we just see it's a bit absurd how seriously we take everything. And I get that. On the other hand, so you've just become a dad. I've been a dad for 2 years or whatever, and I take that very seriously without meaning to. I don't decide to take it seriously. I just take it very, very seriously, and my son's well-being and all the rest of it, and all the people I love, or not just my son. And there's an element of that somehow also feels honorable, noble, necessary for human life. Like, on the one hand, to be playful, to use a term you used earlier, but also to somehow be really committed at the same time to people, or to ideas, or to purposes, or to I don't know what. And I'm not talking about being committed necessarily to getting a six pack or whatever it is, but to put it in grand terms, I don't know. I mean, you can be a great artist, can have a violent commitment to their art, and somehow that seems equally sort of noble or admirable, or an ideal, as yeah. And so this is something that when I describe it abstractly, it's like, okay, yeah, there are these two things, but then you put it in your life and you go, well, what do I do? Do I like chill out, or do I dive in and become passionate? And I'm not asking this as like an objection. It's a genuine question that I always have wondered about. Like, how does one navigate this?
Yeah, I don't see them as explicit choices or mutually
Okay.
exclusive choices. Like,
Mm-hmm.
so I trust me, like if when I'm with my daughter, for example, like I have very like all my attention is on her. Like
Yeah.
I'm not someone who's like on my phone while she's in
Yeah.
my arms. I'm not like
Yeah. Yeah.
using like many distractions. I'm
Yeah.
fully there and I'm fully attentive.
Yeah.
But I have no control over
Yeah.
if my daughter is going to get some sort of terminal illness at some point.
Yeah.
And I'm not trying to sound too
Mm.
morbid here.
No, no, but I
So
know. Yeah. Mm.
it's showing up to it's showing up to life with the full attention.
Yeah.
But like really reconciling it, to me, it seems, I don't know, to me it seems absurd how much control we think we're exerting on things
Yeah.
and how much
Yeah.
misery I think we suffer as an account of things. Like, I told you, like I feel very relaxed about being a father, but as I say, when I'm with my daughter, I pay absolute attention, and I
Yeah.
think I get some relaxation from the amount of attention that or how much presence I have when I'm there.
Yeah.
But I also do feel quite relaxed about being a father because
Mm.
I don't know, there's so much that's out of my control,
Mm.
and I think so much of the ways, even sometimes when I listen to other parents, the stress that I feel off them because they're telling me all
Mm.
the ways in which they're trying to get their child to develop,
Yeah.
or they've got this game for this,
Yeah.
or you can get this for that.
Yeah.
And I'm thinking in my head, like, did Einstein's parents have an elaborate, like, cognitive, I assume he just grew up like most babies of the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah. Yeah.
probably pretty poorly compared to today's
Neglected and
standards,
emotionally
and his work
traumatized.
stand.
Yeah.
Yeah, most likely, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
yet this is what the outcome was.
Yeah.
So I agree with you, but I agree with you. Of course, look, I think I feel like a very alive and passionate person in life,
Mm.
and I feel very committed to to my curiosities, to trying to design a life that I love.
Yeah.
But I also have to. So I think it's both, if you know what I mean. But
Yeah. Yeah.
it's moments of perspective of just laughing at myself because,
Yeah.
like, fucking hell, like you and I aren't going to leave. Even if you were the most famous person in the world, you're probably not going to leave much of a legacy if we're talking about life being in the context
Mm-hmm.
of hundreds of thousands of years from
Yeah. I
now.
don't know. I've done a
If
few
whatever
banging
about.
LinkedIn posts, Mark. Of had like 8 likes or
but,
something. So I'm kind of pinning my hopes on that one. Yeah, but yeah, I take your point.
but
Yeah,
what it was, but what like when you were saying where you're trying to reconcile with that, like where do you land, like in knowing that it's probably a fluctuating continuum,
mm,
like.
mm, mm. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I guess the terms of the problem have changed for me. In the beginning, it was this. It was very much in the language that I described this conflict. Um, Now, yeah, where am I now with this? I'll just think through my life because I find it more productive for myself to think through something concrete than the abstract. So at the moment, my life is full of commitment, right? Because when you become a husband or you become a father, and it comes if you're a certain kind of personality and you have certain kinds of feelings, suddenly there's a lot of commitment that you've deliberately gotten into that you want to honor. So there's a lot of commitment. Yeah, I think my life is heading in that direction and has headed in that direction, in that side of not as much um, being chilled and being able to take a step back, um, and has rather gone in the direction of throwing myself into, or being thrown into this, roiling pool of commitment and so on. And I think one thing I struggle with there right now is trying to make my peace with that in a way, like, because there are voluntarily chosen commitments, right? But once you have them, I can't decide now not to be a father, right? I can't say, right, I'm going to give him back to Amazon. There's like a 90-day returns, no questions asked, and it's there now, and that has massive changes for how I live. And it makes it very clear to me how externally determined my life is. Like, maybe your life is always a bit externally determined, but now it's really in my face. Now it's like, well, yeah, it doesn't matter if you're ill. You've got to brush his teeth or whatever it is. Like, but yeah, it's very.
Yeah,
And that's one of the things that I think, on a feeling level, I'm just struggling with, of trying to figure out how. Yeah, yeah, because my previous models of life that worked for me were very sort of autonomous and individual, right? They were very kind of, yeah, I want freedom of a certain kind, or I want the time to do this, or I have the time to do this, and now that's changed a lot. I think that's my struggle. So I think my struggle is I've dived into commitment without really knowing what I was getting into, wanting it, but not really knowing what it amounted to, and now kind of, figuring out while I go, yeah, what is the life that makes sense to me here? Like, what is the available life here that's good? So I didn't really answer your question. I went off on a tangent, but
no, but
yeah,
that resonates a lot with a conversation I had with a friend last week, where we were just kind of. I sometimes say to my missus, like, if she were to die suddenly, now this is before having a child, um, I don't know. I had a sneaking suspicion I'd head off to a monastery or something.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't know whether that's just some escapist fantasy of mine, or if an inclination to double down more on my investigations, to have a bit of peace and quiet, just to observe
mm,
myself or to observe life, whatever it may be. And this person was kind of sharing they're very dedicated in certain lines of inquiry, and we were kind of marveling at the idea. Then, particularly, I'd say they are more further down the path than I am, if you know what I mean. But just kind of marveling at the idea that this is what they chose. Like a family, a householder life, whatever way you want to describe it, and all that comes with it. And I don't know. Do you have a fantasy of what, like, if you
I
never
used
had
to.
kids, or
I'd be drunk four days
what
a
like
week, Mark.
does
I'd be watching a lot of sport. I'd be I'd be in the bars of Hamburg discovering where the Beatles played. Oh, yeah, no, I think I'd be dead. I'd be dead in 2 years if I didn't have kids. No, I used to. I actually was very, very, very close in a way to becoming a monk, or to wanting to become, to doing it. In my early 20s in London. I mean, it's something about London, isn't it? It just makes everyone so miserable. You develop fantasies, and my fantasy was a monk fantasy.
It was in London that I started meditating when I was 31 as well.
There you go. So London, in a way, is the engine of the evolution of humankind, because it makes people feel so bad, like they're driven to do something. So even London is good ultimately. That's its purpose. But so I have had. I don't even want to mock it by calling it a fantasy. It was actually a genuine aspiration, and I had it very strongly. And then it kind of fell away a little bit. And over time, I don't know if this is Stockholm syndrome, but I now think something actually different. So there used to be this instinctive separation I made between this is daily life, and then off you go to the Himalayas, and that's where you hide in your cave and you meditate for 15 hours a day, and eventually you see that either everything is one or it's not, but it's nice. I don't know. You see something and you get enlightened. And and I have this, but for quite a long time now, I just very strongly, instinctively feel, without having massive arguments for this, but I just feel something completely opposite. And I think if there is such a thing as enlightenment, which I don't know, but if there is, then the only enlightenment that's worthwhile for me is the one that happens in life. I don't want to be some marvelously serene, peaceful creature in a cave by myself. I think, no, this is life. I'm here. I am surrounded by other lives and things and people, and I'm thrown into the mess of all of this, and this is where the turmoil happens. And for any kind of peace or love to be worthwhile, it has to happen here. It's not the stuff that happens in the forest. And so, from that perspective, sometimes I find life really valuable. So I find it really valuable. So, for example, this stuff about loving people, right? Like, yeah, let's love people. Yeah, let's. Fucking hell, when you're bringing a young kid up, it can be really hard to love your wife sometimes, because you're both like completely, at least we are sometimes completely beyond our limits of what we can do and what we've taken on. But we still have to keep going. And then there's obviously a lot of friction, because you think, oh, can you just do this? And she can't, or whatever. And just whenever people are exhausted, obviously there's going to be a lot more friction than when they're not. And you discover where the limits are of your generosity or your bigness or that kind of thing. And so I now feel, if I put it in a slogan, the really worthwhile challenge is just, can I love my wife through my life? It's not even can I love some abstract notion of oneness, but can I actually just love my wife in a very tangible way for the rest of my life? And I think and that's how I would judge even other people's claims of spiritual development or evolution, or what are you doing in life?
That's really beautifully put. I think that there's so much of what you're saying resonates in terms of stepping away even from the notion of an idea of enlightenment. Like, as you said, I think I've read about some people's experiences where I assume that's the experience that they had in life. Like, I don't know if it's Ramana Maharshi or whoever else, like, where you're just like, okay, that seems like an interesting thing, an interesting experience, and maybe some state was experienced. But I also as well, and despite this idea of thinking that I'd run away to a monastery, like it's how do you live your life, I guess, and I think I don't know. There's a quote by Gandhi that I always really liked. Apparently, when he was traveling around the country, seeing how different parts of India was, how it was engaging under obviously the British rule at the time, and a reporter runs up to him and he's leaving a train station and he says, what's your message for the people? And he just quickly wrote down on a piece of paper, let your message, let your life be your message, or something to this effect. Mm-hmm. And I'm always, it drives my missus insane sometimes when I sometimes don't care what words people are saying. Like, I really don't care, and I don't even care if they're all that researched. Yeah. I just want to know, how do you live your life? Mm-hmm. And that's the kind of the proof of everything. So I think breaking everything down there to just, can you love your wife? Because everyone goes through experiences where you've just driven each other to your wits' ends sometimes. Like, where does the love go then? Like, or can you even admit that there's hate in your heart in a particular moment in time, or if hate can exist in your heart, whatever way you want to put it. But can you even just be honest with your partner then? Like, man, it's really hard to say that I love you right now. And maybe even that's a bit of a space to have a bit of a laugh at the predicament you find yourself in, without taking it too lightly. But yeah, there's something like almost so bread and butter basics of that I think is super important.
Mm-hmm. And so I've had a few mystical experiences, just randomly, not associated with drugs, surprisingly. I've had in the last, or maybe I did, but I was so high I forget them. It's the danger, isn't it? Yeah, it was amazing, but shit, I don't remember. I've had a few mystical experiences. I don't know. So for example, I had one where I felt a kind of a connection with everything and everyone, and I felt real love and sympathy and love that went beyond. I don't know. It's hard to describe, but I've read accounts of mystical experiences, and if you just throw in the abstract nouns of like love and a bit of a questioning about the nature of the identity that you presume you have, and feeling of connection and the feeling of lightness and laughter, and so I've occasionally had this stuff, and in the last few years, I've had it in therapy. I've been doing therapy consistently, and occasionally this would happen. And for a while, I was like, "Shit, am I enlightened?" It's like walking around going, "Am I special?" And over a bit of time, like my view now is, like, they're nice, like these experiences that I had. I'm glad I had them. But they're better to have than not to have, just because they're nice experiences. It's like, like, life doesn't really happen in those experiences, or rather, they're part of life. But, okay, you get that little experience. For a long time, I kept chasing that. I kept being like, I want to have this experience again. I want to have this experience all the time. And this was naturally impossible. And I'm coming around to the view that this chasing of experience, this chasing of a certain feeling, maybe even, to be provocative for you, this chasing of a way of being in the world, is ultimately just a more subtle form of trying to control your experience. It's ultimately the same thing that we're trying not to do, and we're doing it at a higher level. And so I'm not articulating this very well because I don't talk about this at all, really, because you don't want to scare people.
No. I felt to be honest, this resonates with me. So it's very, it's feeling, what you're saying sounds very clear to me. So please carry on.
What am I saying? If it sounds clear to you, tell me. What am I saying?
So no, because look, it is interesting. I think when we go through a path of, I do think that there's like there's a chasing and a seeking that goes on, which I haven't reconciled or squared away myself yet, in terms of definitely chasing exalted states of existence, like, enlightenment, as you say. Like, I definitely had this delusion in my head when I start meditating, doing silent retreats or whatever. Oh, maybe in 5 years I might taste enlightenment. You
Yeah,
know what I mean?
yeah,
And in a very like arrogant way or something, and a sense of specialness about myself as well within that.
yeah.
Um, and and then, even having had some experiences that logically I can't possibly square away, experiences that left me simultaneously laughing and crying with no substances or anything else involved in it, which my rational brain just can't put into to can't provide a solid explanation for it. And and then, even just what you said there, then, like, if are we doing the exact same thing at maybe if you even wanted to be kind to yourself at a higher level, or is it just the exact same thing dressed up in different clothes?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And I don't know, like, for me, there's yes and no would be the answer, even in terms of what you were saying could be provocative to what I was saying about a state of being. I do believe sometimes there is a chase involved in it, and I do believe there's
Mm-hmm.
sometimes perhaps a letting go of that chase, and just
Yeah.
I don't know what cultivates a space of coming into what feels like a direct contact with life experience.
Mm-hmm.
And often, sometimes it could be because I feel I've done my processes. Do you know what I mean? And I could attribute it to doing certain things and eating well and whatever else. But then conversely, I've also had some really wonderful experiences where I've just been, where I was getting too stoned for a period of time, eating junk food and watching too much YouTube, and still something could happen in my day. Do you get me? Like, where I not as some enlightened experience or exalted experience, but just where I feel
Yeah.
a direct contact with life, or the
Yeah.
with life without maybe all its labels and its projections
Mm-hmm.
on some clearing or something exists.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I think it's I don't like I'm very confused on all that. Like, is there a state
Yeah.
that we should be
Yeah.
we should be aiming for? Can we aim for it? What contributes to it? I don't particularly know, to be honest.
Yeah. 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 I mean, I neither do I, of course. But so yeah. So just so, for example, is there a state that we should be aiming for? My instinctive strong response is that this would be a mistake. And the reason for thinking this, and I know this is probably language you don't like to say so strongly, this is a mistake, but the reason for saying it so strongly is I think if you just look at all the states we have, they are transitory. If you just look at them for more than 3 minutes, you see that there is no state we have that is consistent. Like, there's nothing. There's nothing that is stably there. So it seems to me mental to have the ambition of preserving a particular state. Because I just think, well, that's not the nature of a state. So that I think that more generally, like as you were talking, something clicked for me a little bit. And yeah, and you were saying you were confused about this stuff, and I'm confused about this stuff. To do with, yeah, I don't know, meditation and ayahuasca and Aaron Rodgers. And I I realized that for myself that the like all this shit in the end is just words, right? It's just like, and even at a high level, it's like, okay, for example, everything is one, right? I don't know. I've heard this thrown around. Um, yeah, I don't know, mate. This is just like concepts about concepts. And because I spent 15 years, basically my job was handling concepts and constructing systems around them and criticizing systems around them, I've reached the point of all I really care about is my day. Or that's yeah. I mean, sometimes I go away from that, and then I generally suffer as a result. But yeah, all I really care about and the unit. So I think maybe this is part of. Sorry, I'm thinking aloud and things are coming to mind now. I think this is part of my struggle with the question of this podcast: what is a good life? Um, like the framing of that question. Well, for me, that unit is too big. I don't know. I can't think in terms of a life, or I find it difficult now. And and there's actually an effort and a continual movement in my life towards just trying to keep it. as basic as possible and as kind of messy as possible. So kind of, okay, this right now I ate a chili. That's my life. I'm not like thinking about anything else. I just ate this bloody chili and it's really hot. And yeah, and I'm not advocating this as some kind of general thing, but I think for someone like me, who was lost in concepts for a long time, this is a really useful corrective. And I realize that that's where I'm at, and I realize that that's why I struggle a bit talking about such questions now. It used to be my bread and butter. It used to be philosophy. Yeah, okay, Kant said this about the good life. Mill said this. We'll put this
Yeah, yeah.
together. And now I really struggle. Yeah, okay. But sorry, this is like self-revelation. It's not particularly
No,
interesting.
but this is right on point with why I wanted to ask people this and take it out of the realm of, well, ironically, I'm talking to a philosopher, but to take it out of the realm of just like philosophy, philosophizing over, just to see what people in general had to say about it.
Yeah.
And like if the full name of the podcast really be "What is a good life for you?"
Mm,
Because that's really the question I'm asking, and not in a wider universal sense, but just because I think we're all our unique bundle of things, our own unique, very specific constellation of things that there's some mystery into, not mystery, but there's some, if I saw a point of life, it would be, actually, yeah, I'm questioning even the statement that I'm about to say, but trying to
yeah.
orientate yourself in a way that maybe you feel at home in the world, at home in your
Mm-hmm,
life.
mm-hmm,
That
mm-hmm,
whatever unique constellation of you are, that perhaps that can play a very particular chord, right? Like
mm-hmm,
it makes a very particular sound, and when you make this
mm-hmm,
sound, that you feel, at least maybe it's the vibration of it, but you feel okay in the world, you feel at home in the
mm-hmm,
world, maybe you feel like you belong in your life. And
mm-hmm.
that doesn't mean that everything feels lovely. That could even come in a moment where there's struggle and turmoil, but
Yeah.
there's still a space beneath that where you're just like, okay, I've accepted this, and
Mm-hmm,
I'll move through
mm-hmm,
life with this in whatever way
yeah.
it is.
Yeah.
But ultimately, that it's something along the lines of you figuring out what that is, and it's
Mm-hmm,
not something like be your authentic self, or do you know what I mean? Like I find myself very irritated with a lot of the labels that are put on some of these things. Like
mm-hmm,
I think there's like a some sort of deeper resonance that, and I'm not even sure if it means an expression of yourself. Maybe it just comes back to a way of being again, but once again, that state of being isn't a goal. Maybe it's just that once that happens a few times, it makes it worth it. I've talked
mm-hmm,
to some, I don't want to go all over the map here, but I talked to some friends before about parenting, and I think they gave me some really clear ideas about what parenting could be, longer term, like beyond newborn stage, which I'm going through at the moment. But just like, 51% or 49% of parenting is shit, they said, and 51% is amazing.
uh-huh,
Something like this. But I'm even wondering in life sometimes, like, Jesus, just some of those moments in our day where we feel so deeply connected to something, whether it's a passion of ours, whether it's a wife, a child, whether it's a moment of being, and just with life itself, even a oneness that you were alluding to, even through whatever way you want to characterize a state like that, that it's just a connection with those moments that just makes the rest of it tolerable. Like the
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
the questioning, the seeking, the stuff that we just know is going to make us feel like crap tomorrow that we're still
mm-hmm,
doing today. Like just these brief moments, something in that kind of ballpark
mm-hmm.
anyway.
Can you can you give me an example of both of these things? So just a time, a period, a moment when you felt this, whatever it might be, this
So
connection or
okay,
something
so
else, or
like even so, like I know today, so my wife is, I find her very funny, like, so she has given me two eruptions of laughter already, like
uh-huh,
proper belly aching laughs. And it's not that during it I'm like, oh, take a note of this, that happened now, so that's it's going to make the rest
yeah,
of it worth it. But the way I'd almost like to, I used to play a little bit of golf, not obsessively, but to the point that I was pretty bad at it. But all I'd need to do was, if I got a birdie or I hit one great shot,
mm-hmm,
that would be enough encouragement to come out the next day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And the feeling of that
Mm-hmm.
one shot, that where the ball actually went where I wanted it to go, or something like that, that it was worth it. But I know, like, I'm trying to write at the moment a book from all these interviews, and sometimes over the last week or so, that's been frustrating, or even seeing the limitations of my own endeavor, if you know what I mean, or
Yeah.
capacity at this point, as I maybe strive for something better. Um, or like yourself, try to figure out the path of making a consistent living from what I love, like, and the inconsistency that can come with that as well. I don't know, there's just moments in life where I'm just like, like that felt beautiful, or that
Yeah.
felt like a higher moment of something, and
Yeah.
everything else seems like it seems okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I was diagnosed with bipolar disorder about 15, 20 years ago. And I regularly used to be depressed every year. So I would go through, like, on average, like, I did a lot of therapy. I would learn to handle it, and so when I reached the point of being a functioning manic depressive, or a high functioning manic depressive, the rhythm of my year was every year for about 3 months in total, I would have depressive phases. Sometimes it would be like a chunk of 3 months, others would be like 2 weeks, and like properly depressive. And I just thought, this is my life, right? This is what it is. And I have the compensation of, in the other time, I get hypermanic and I can do loads of stuff and blah, blah, blah. That's my life. I was talking to my cousin, who is a psychiatrist, and I told her about it. And she was like, yeah, Pranay, that's 25% of your life. That's 3 months out of 12 every year that you're depressed. It's a big chunk of your life. And that really struck me. I'd made my peace with it. Be like, yeah, this is just what it is. It's fine. But that was really like, that's right. That's 25% of my life that I'm just accepting is garbage. And I'm just going, okay, fine. And that started the next process for me of trying to deal with it, and so on. And I'm saying all this here, maybe you see it already. When you talk about these moments that then make the other moments tolerable, like, what I'm sort of trying to, yeah, ask you now is, that's if that's the balance of life, if that's the balance of your life, right? I guess there are two forms of these questions. One is, why are you sort of relegating 98% of your moments to the stuff that needs the perfect golf shot to be tolerable? Right? Maybe I'll just ask
Yeah,
that question. And it's
yeah.
I really,
I don't think I've quite, like, I don't think I probably articulated it clearly. If you know
yeah,
what I mean.
I probably misunderstood. Tell me.
No, but I think you probably picked up on what I said with the words, but I don't think I fully. I don't know. Like, so overall, I very much enjoy life, and I would say I enjoy not the shit, like, maybe even the stuff that other people might consider the shitty part of life. I'd enjoy it, but I just mean, I'd say we're more in a state of striving, or bring it back down to the aversion, or like attachments. Like, I think mostly we're kind of in states like that, like, or we're trying
Mm,
to soothe ourselves with something, whether it's through technology or food or alcohol
mm,
or whatever. So that's what I mean. Like, I think there's a lot of our lives are spent in a state of attachment or aversion, and I
mm,
think I that's what I'm more talking about. It's not that it's a state of depression, or
yeah, yeah,
that I don't really enjoy. Like, I think I'm pretty blessed with how much I would enjoy my life. Like, I don't.
mm,
I'm rarely complaining about much. Not in the sense that I don't see things that I don't point
yeah,
out
yeah,
as
yeah,
bullshit or something like this. But generally, I take account for lots that have happened in everything that's happened in my life, and I'm comfortable
yeah,
with that, and I'm comfortable with the
yeah,
choices I'm making and the consequences of the choices I'm making, and I'm
yeah,
enthusiastic to get up and to start writing,
yeah,
or to do something at 7 o'clock in the morning. Like, so I've an excitement for my life, but I
yeah,
would still say most of my life is spent in a state of either attachment or aversion.
yeah, yeah. I mean, so from that, tell me if this resonates. I take two ideas from that. One is, perhaps an idea of freedom of some kind. Namely, when you talk about these, if your life, my life too, everyone's life really, being ruled by attachment and aversion to a large extent, right? The moments when they're not seem like a kind of freedom, right? They seem like, okay, yeah, I can exhale and I'm not at the mercy of these mad masters for a moment. And then
Yeah.
it feels wonderful. So that's one thing I take from what you said. And the other thing, which is where my question was heading a bit, and this is for me, yeah, something I really like. A couple of weeks ago, I had what felt like an insight to me. I was like, that's wise. And yeah, and then my son threw water over me, and I forgot. The insight, or what felt like insight that I had, was it came in the form of a question, and I was feeling bad about something. I can't even remember what it was now, and so and then the question was, what if everything was God? And I used God because that's a language that makes sense to me, but doesn't have to be God. But the idea of the question, as I got it, was in everything that life gives me. So even these moments of attachment and aversion, almost like a thought experiment. What if God was to be found there, was to be found exactly in the attachment and the aversion? And what if God was to be found in that moment exactly in anger? And it felt like an insight because it kind of, yeah, it was really helpful anyway to me because it allowed me to relax into my bad feelings, and it also gave me a kind of not just a tolerance of them, but almost a love of them when I could in moments access this. And and yeah, and so that's where my question was kind of pushing towards, that I asked you about why it's producing these moments and those, just to ask you the question as well, or to give you the question that I was given of, yeah, what if there was like a really radical attempt to, yeah, even the attachment and the aversion is kind of like saying, okay, like, yeah, this state we're gonna not like, and this state we're gonna like, and I get this makes sense to me, but it was just a really interesting and powerful tool for me to be like, what if actually, if everything is one, then attachment is part of one. If everything
Yeah.
is God, attachment is God,
No,
and I can find God in the attachment. Yeah,
this is a sentiment that honestly, literally, I wrote about this week on
there you go.
a piece of paper, or sorry, on my notepad here. I was actually just looking through my notes to see the exact thing that I
Yeah.
wrote about it. I think it has to be like, and sorry, I could have said this even as a precursor to what I said, but I'm still going to be caught. Like, this comes back to my idea again of part of then the process is to forget that that's God for me, where I'm not going to have that perspective all the time, that I'm still going to be caught. I'm going to be momentarily, even if for however long the moment it could be a second, it could be half an hour. do you know what I mean? It could be a day, but
Hmm.
that it is that repeated process of, I can't see why this stuff, it's so pervasive, this attachment, aversion stuff. It's so pervasive in my life that I can't possibly see it to be a mistake, or I can't
Yeah.
possibly see it as unlovable, because that is going to be a brutal existence if that
Hmm.
stuff is unlovable.
Yeah.
Even our less virtuous, like, we might be very proud to say, well, I was loving, I was caring. What about when you were like hateful and
Yeah.
judgmental and ignorant and all this?
Yeah.
Because, like, man, there's a lot of ignorance in me, like, do
Yeah.
you know what I mean, in terms of judgment of other people, in terms of, I don't know what someone else is going through in
Yeah.
their life, and I still judge them. There's a huge amount of ignorance
Yeah.
in that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I fully agree with you.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but but this is where I think some of these states become really, there is a beauty to them, but yet, if I still need to, I don't know, eat
Mm.
some crappy food to deal with the
Yeah.
aversion or the attachment, I still,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
realization of it being God still hasn't extricated me from the loop,
Yeah.
if you know
Yeah.
what I mean.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
But
But that's
I
an
do think,
yeah.
sorry, go on.
No, no, go. No. You do think?
Yeah, but that's the interesting part. Like, it doesn't necessarily extricate me from the act,
Mm-hmm.
but I can still do things in a far more loving way. Like, in
Mm-hmm.
a way, this is now just my own relationship with myself,
Yeah,
where it's not so, the judgment after isn't as harsh. So maybe if the initial act doesn't change, the impact of that act, or the
yeah,
reverberations of that act aren't as drawn out, or something to that
yeah,
effect.
yeah, yeah. And actually, I mean, to build on that, and that what I wanted to say is, in my experience, and maybe this is helpful on a daily level for me, is I found it transformative pretty much always to start from where I am. And by this, I mean all the moments I've had, or the times I've had when I've fully gone, I don't know, yes, I feel hatred right now, or yes, this is what I'm thinking right now, or yes, this is where I am, or this is what is going on right now, or yes, this is my life right now. And to, to the extent that I've been able to fully, fully go there, those things have sort of given me some kind of power or energy or force or momentum that's helped in extricating yourself from old patterns. So it's kind of, I found in my experience, the moments that I've had when I've gone, no, I'm going to be fully where I am, whatever it is, even if I don't find it attractive, even if I don't want to be, or I don't want life to be like this, I'm going to try to just go, yeah, this is what it is. This is what I'm doing. This is what I, whatever it is. And when I've really done that, somehow it's liberated a kind of creative energy
Yeah.
to change things. Yeah. So it's not an objection to your point. It's just a supplement. That sometimes for me, it's been not just about changing my relation to myself. This acknowledgement of what's going on. Sometimes it's actually changed what's going on over a period of time, simply by being okay. This is where I am, and I'm just going to tell the truth to myself about this. I'm going to, yeah. So I think it's, for me, it's been a very powerful tool, or a very powerful thing beyond even just loving myself or whatever it is. It's actually changed my life in some ways. Yeah, yeah.
And what do you see as it kind of, how what's the difference then in terms of how you're experiencing your life post this realization then, like, if you were to
So
give an example?
yeah, I mean, so yesterday, my wife and I fought. I was first pissed off by something she said, and I didn't. There wasn't the time to share my pissed offness, so I just let it nicely stew and simmer into a little cauldron of resentment. Really cook that shit up, and then 3 hours later, when she came in through the door with Rahi in a stroller, I gave her a really mean hello, and then she's like, what's wrong with you?" And then I would take another little break, and then 3 hours later, when it still built up even more, we talked a little bit about it, and we didn't find resolution last night. We found it much later, but yeah. And what happened last night, and I'm really actually proud of myself for this, or grateful that it was possible. Um, when she went to bed and we were still fighting, I said, like, I love you, like, and I meant it. And I said, we're fighting and it's difficult right now, and I think you're an asshole. I didn't say that, but it was clear from context that, yeah, things are tough. The fundamental color of my feelings towards you is that I love you. This is the context against which all of this is happening. And I think one of the reasons I was able to say that is, to some extent, I was more able to live with the fact that I was and had been an asshole. I was more able to be like, yeah, I'm also angry, and to some extent unfairly angry, but to some extent fairly angry. And I was just able to accept the cocktail a bit more that was going on inside me, and I was able to accept her cocktail a bit more. And there's no, like, I don't have a rational explanation. There's no one line that explains that's why. But in feeling, it was very clear that helped something soften and open up, and allowed for more generosity than there would often have been from me in such a situation. So that's one small example. I don't know if that that
No,
makes
no,
sense.
it does. Like I think I would say absolutely in my life as well. The more I'm comfortable with just not the reality of my actions, or in whatever way you want to view that, but like the more comfortable I'm with my what I could see as what I may have previously judged as my most virtuous or my lowest expressions. Like I've always had a thing with anger where, initially when I came to meditation, I tried to suppress anger completely. And I got pretty good at the
Yeah.
noticing something rise and then disengaging. And then all of a sudden I became, if conflict was very hard for me, I was looking to avoid conflict all the time. So that wasn't a healthy
Yeah.
that wasn't a healthy way of trying to approach this. But it was definitely the more comfortable I'm just with, like, not to say that this is who I am. It's a weird thing. It's not there's absolute accountability. I always say to my missus, if where I feel I'm going wrong, whether it's to do with her or another relationship, like this is where I think I'm going wrong on this. It's not to be unaccountable, but there's also just some things that happen with a frequency in my life that if I'm killing myself for those things, I'll never get a wider perspective. There's never going to be a space, because the self-judgment would just be so harsh that I'm, instead of actually remedying a thing or any movement, I'm so caught up in the self-judgment of it. So I think the more comfortable we become with, even if we want to define them as our edges or our extreme behavior, whatever way you want to do it, like, but just an acknowledgement that, this too is worthy of some love, or this is not everything is there to be banished. Do you know what I mean? Because in my experience of even banishing anger as an expression from my life for a period of 12 to 18 months, like, which became completely unsustainable, that was absolutely a far worse solution than giving it some expression. And then, I think as well, and any time we're having conversations with people, the moment you can, I was thinking about this morning over a coffee, like the moment you can either go first with your love, I was thinking about just how people react to my baby or to my dog. And generally with humans, with a newborn or a dog, there's just, people just come out with their love straight away. Or maybe the dog or the baby, they feel it. Love has come first in the interaction, whoever gets there first, and just how opening that is. And somehow as we go through life and we deal with adults, love isn't the thing that comes first often. So then even if it's in a moment of conflict, I think there's just something beautiful, not to make this a mission, because I don't think it's maybe not always doable straight away. Even you say there, the hello was a gruff hello,
Oh, it was more than gruff.
But that's,
Gruff
but
is
just
polite.
at some, but you know what I'm saying? Like, so I don't know, there's, and in those moments then massive change is possible. Like I think from what you're just describing at times, even just like an acceptance of who we are in any way, shape or form, I think that has huge potential for change in our lives. How we deal with conflict, how we deal with people, how we judge people. And it's funny,
and
all the while,
well.
this whole thing, absolutely, but all the while,
sorry,
then, this whole loop still plays, though, right? Like where we fall out of the love, where we fall out of the observation that everything is God, that it becomes so personal and minute. And it's this, I think, as long as this kind of, I think what I was trying to get at when I just said there's moments in life where there's just brief realizations that shift everything else in the day. Like insofar as if you just have that brief realization that, like, if I go first with love, it may open something up here. If I have that brief realization that even when I get caught again with my attachments and my aversions, that I can once again have this realization. And I think over time, for me, it's not this static state that I fall into, but just that repeated moving or leaning back into that perspective. That's what over a lifetime can have a profound effect, even if in the short term it doesn't feel like profound change is occurring.
Yeah, I shouldn't, just probably can't hear me. I have little to say to that, because I agree. It's easier when I disagree, and then I can object to something when the conversation goes on. I mean, There's this book, you may have come across it, I read it recently. It's by a ex-philosophy professor who worked in religious philosophy. What was his name? Thurman, maybe? Bob Thurman, maybe? And he talks about his experience of, he claims to be enlightened. He says, yeah, that happened over a period of time. And he's only revealing it now. But it's really interesting because he talks about becoming enlightened, according to him, doesn't eliminate. So he was still an asshole to his wife. He still had to work on developing a loving relationship with his wife. And actually, it became quite disastrous until the crisis, and it got better and so on. But the interesting feature of it was you could, according to him, you could have these metaphysical revelations or emotional experiences on the one hand, and fully have them and consistently experience the world in a certain way. But that didn't eliminate the need for all the human work of, okay, I'm now enlightened, but I need to stop being a dick to my wife. Somehow there were two separate jobs. It wasn't like enlightenment fixed it. And to go off on a bit of a tangent, just because we've not talked about this at all, but I'll just throw this in there as maybe the ending provocation. This is part of my issue with, like, one of the premises of a lot of the mindfulness and the yoga and the meditation and the general spirituality, blah, 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 blah. A lot of the time, when I meet people who do this stuff, I experience it as a way of avoiding human responsibility. I experience sympathy because I think, there is suffering here. There's a lot of suffering here, and I feel that, and I think, find what you can to help yourself out of the suffering or to soothe it. And I completely can meet that with respect and love. But the flip side is this abdication often of, if I'm doing that, that's what's going to fix stuff, and that's a mistake. I think no. And so I found this book interesting, basically because it confirmed my prejudices. So it's like, good book. Awesome.
Almost the best books. I can fly through those books.
Really clever.
No, look, No, but I fully, which will disappoint you again, but that fully resonates with me as well. But it doesn't matter. I know some people that could. The way I perceive it to be sometimes is you can meditate for as long as you want. You can do as much yoga as you want. You can do whatever, as much fasting, etc. But if there's certain truths about yourself that you don't want to come into contact with, it won't fundamentally shift many things in your own personal life. And I think a lot of that comes down to, from my perspective, just acknowledging just how flawed, and I mean this in a genuine way, like wonderfully flawed, like, because it's both at the same time. Do you know what I mean? It's not just like I've got all these good characteristics and these bad characteristics. Mm-hmm. That is all of me all the time. I don't get to pick and choose which one is me and which isn't me. And I think, I don't know, there's something, if throughout the conversation, I think that a lot of it is even just coming to peace with what previously maybe we considered limitations, but really we're just seeing as part of our experience, of a part of who we are. And it's not a rush to fix or change them, but it's just a broadened perspective that can give them a little space to exist, which then conversely, they don't have as many, I don't know, as treacherous a consequence sometimes to our relationships with ourselves, with other people, our wives, with the world.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
If I know you don't like, you may not even like the question. I already have like a slogan answer in mind. It's a slogan answer that you gave, but just as I tend to finish these conversations, Pranay, it is with the question of what is a good life for you?
What's the slogan answer that I gave?
I think a beautiful answer in the context of what it means to you would be loving my wife.
Right. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Not my wife.
I'm happy with that. I'm happy.
Terrible
I'm loving all wives. Yeah, that's a good life. Yeah, choir wife. No, but in the context of how we talked about this, I think that does pick out a good quote. And yeah. I mean, if let me, I can't slogan it because I don't have a theory or something, but I can pick out a couple of things that matter to me in answering that question. And the most important thing is what we've talked about quite a bit. This idea for me that it's in the mess of daily life that everything is to be found. It's the good life, if it exists, has to be found while your kids shat on your shoe and you're tired. Beauty, God, love, it, whatever it is, you have to find it where you are, and that. And I emphasize it. It seems almost banal to say it, but I emphasize this because I was like this, and I see many people like this. I see a tendency like this to think that all these big grand things like beauty and love and God, and they're somewhere else. That we have to find them somewhere else. That we have to go to a mountain. That we have to go to a different state of consciousness. That we have to isolate ourselves from things. That if we had external peace, then we would be able to find it. If it was silent, then we would find it. And I am deeply convinced from my experience that no, if these things exist, they have to exist right here and right now in the mess of your life. So that would be the one thing I pick out about the good life.
I have nothing further to add to that, Pranay. That was absolutely beautiful. I'll thank you for joining us today on the What is a Good Life podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you today.
Yeah.
And I look forward to future conversations, man.
Yeah, thanks, Mark. I really liked it too. Much more tolerable than other podcasts I've been on because we actually had a chat.